Hi everyone and welcome to this week's edition of Catherine and Lorimer's Guide to Life podcast. Week 3. Woohoo! Hope you guys are okay. How's it all going? Hope everyone has an amazing week. So it's being slightly more organised for me. I actually have notes on a laptop, okay, and I'm doing this on a Thursday night, so it's not lastminute.com. Okay, so where did we leave last week? So Pippa, poor Pippa, seemed to have a urinary incontinence issue at 4. Okay, so it's to do with like muscles around the whole area. Okay, and she's got some hormone tablets, which has kind of worked. It's not quite right, so we're back off to the vets again tomorrow morning for yet another bill. Yeah, £80 plus that was about £100 last week. Yeah, not that I'm counting or anything, Pippa. Hey, we better get savings. I don't think you've got that much money in your savings account, have you? Never mind. But these things happen, you know. Do you know what? If you have pets, you've got to be prepared to look after them properly. She does have insurance. I don't know if it'll cover it. I haven't let them know yet. We'll see what it is. But, you know, as I say, at the end of the day, you have to get the vet out and you have to take them to the vets and look after them if they're not very well. And then you just find a way to pay for whatever medication or, you know, treatment that they need, because that's part of your responsibility of having an animal. I saw something on Facebook which really annoyed me. And yeah, it was somebody had like a rescue. It was a rescue English setter. And the rescue actually got a phone call from the people who are looking after it saying, if you don't come and pick up this dog tomorrow, we're taking it to the vets to have it put down. I mean, what sort of person does that? That is just absolutely awful. So bless her heart, my friend Liz, who I did a podcast with quite some time ago, she about running a marathon. She got in a car, razzed down, picked up the dog, and she said the dog's lovely. It's 9, but it's lovely. There's no issues with it whatsoever. So, you know, well done, Liz. Hang on. And you know, if there are more people like Liz in the world, then the world would be a much better place, wouldn't it? So yeah, I'm quite happy to sort of name and shame. I don't know the name of the person, but I'm happy to shame that person because it's just disgraceful behaviour. It really, really is. Yeah, so, you know, we'll just see what happens. I think if you've seen the video that I put up on social media, shoved it on Instagram yesterday and it'll be going up on Facebook tomorrow. Yeah, it's Pippa jumping up at the tree, or is she looking at the tree? I'm pretty sure that she kind of like shakes the tray, jumps up at it and knocks it and tries to get some apples off it because she really loves apples. You know, I think apples are okay for dogs. Carrots certainly are. So, yeah, it's, you know, that's fantastic. What did she do this week? Not too many Asbo things. All she's done this week is mugged, okay, other dog walkers for treats. What she does is she can smell them on her and she's there shuffling along, walking along to heel to this random person. Can I have a treat, please? Inevitably, she just tend to get one. It's just a bit naughty, but you know, that's it for what Pippa does. So this week I thought I'd focus a little bit more about Merlin. Because I kind of like, because I did some social media. I did like a video, which I'll shove up this week. The next week. I sent it over to the teenager and I said, right, what do you think of this video? And she's like, oh yeah, that's really cool. And I was thinking, oh right, okay then. And I thought, well, it's because I take horse riding for granted and think, yeah, it's a bit mundane and interesting what I'm doing because I've been doing it for so long, but I don't appreciate that most of you guys out there don't have a horse or a pony, so you don't know what we do, and so you find it interesting. So I'm going to focus a little bit more about Merlin. This week, I've got a cracking social media post, which I haven't shown to the teenager yet, and it's really quite funny. And basically, that's quite often my morning, okay? And when you see it on social media, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So how does it, life of equestrian, okay? How does it work? What do we do? Well, and I've said it before, but a lot of equestrians are actually we're NHS people. I met there's a couple of NHS people at the yard that I'm on now, and the previous yard I came from, there's another NHS person. So it is something that NHS people do tend to do. We do go horse riding, and it takes our minds off the tough parts of the job, because it's, some parts are dealing with people being really, really poorly and, dying. So you have to have the kind of, the kind of outlet to kind of get yourself through it and to focus on it. It's sort of kind of a form of mindfulness. So what does my day look like being the question? What do I do? Well, it's usually at the moment, so obviously my routine's changed because I moved in with John, but it's a 6 o'clock start. Okay. Sometimes 5:45. And at the moment, the day is it will be, go down to the yard, get the pony in, brush him down, so we'll call grooming, that is, pick his feet out, you get like a little hoof pick and you pick his feet out to make sure he hasn't got any stones in his hooves. And then you tack him up, okay, and you go for a ride. We're going for a hack. If I was doing a major schooling session with him, so say, imagine, so that kind of a hack's maybe an equivalent of like going for a walk with a dog, sort of a stroll in the country. If I was doing what they call a schooling session, so if I was making him work quite hard, say lots of canter, maybe some jumping, then imagine that you were kind of like, you've just been eating your breakfast, okay, and then half an hour later you take yourself off for a run or a big gym session. You're going to feel a little bit ill, aren't you? So it's the same principle with horses. If I was doing that, then I would have to leave them in this stable for probably about an hour at least. So an hour at least off the grass, so that I could then actually ask him to do a little bit more. So we're going out. We'll go out on the fields. I did do like a little riding session. There's a big flat hay field that I kind of doing some what they call transitions in. So that will be walking, okay, trotting and cantering. So whenever you change from walk to trot to canter, then that's called a transition. So we're working on these transitions. And what does it do? Well, if you have a little bit of a lazy horse, which Merlin is, going sort of quickly is, well, he will do it, but it's like it requires a bit too much of an effort for him. But it's always easier, in my opinion, to get a lazy horse to go forward than it is to get a really fast forward horse to stop. In my personal opinion, you're safer with a lazy horse. And what we're doing is but the way to get him going forward is to do lots of transitions, okay? Because it kind of wakes you up. Imagine if you were kind of like walking and you're kind of walking along the pavement and then you jogged a few steps and then you walked a few steps and you jogged a few steps and you walked a few steps. You'd slowly start to wake your body up, wouldn't you? All the muscles and everything would like slowly start to kind of come alive and you'd feel a bit more, and you'd probably run for a little bit longer. Well, it's exactly the same principle when we're kind of warming a horse up and we're kind of asking it to work and we're kind of loosening it up a bit and doing some transitions and kind of getting it to go forward and to move quite a little bit. And then I do that in walk. And at the moment I am concentrating on steps. So for example, I'm doing like 10 strides of walk, then asking him for trot, 10 strides of trot, then asking him to go back down to walk. And it's the kind of, so when you're sitting on the horse, okay, right, when you come to change gear, so the top riders, they change gear, and you can't see anything happening, okay? So what is happening if you're on a horse? So you're pushing your stomach muscles out, you're squeezing with the top of your thighs. It all sounds a bit dodgy again, doesn't it? And then you're squeezing with the reins and you're stopping your pelvic movement, okay? And that's how you it's called engaging the brakes. And then you squeeze the reins and they should drop and go into a transition down or a halt. And it's working on the accuracy of that. That's something I've not been able to do. I did about 15 minutes of it and I was in quite a bit of pain actually afterwards, to be fair. Which is fortunately it's going away quite quickly, which is great. I used to be able to do this all the time, but now I say with all the issues I've had with my SI joints and my piriformis muscles, it's been a little bit tricky doing that, but actually that was okay and it worked okay and it was absolutely fine. So that's really, really good news. So then what happens? So then he goes back in the stable. If he's got really hot, I'll just sponge him down just to cool him down a little bit. And if he was, say he'd worked really, really hard and it was quite cold and I had to shower him down, then I would shove what they call a sweat rug on him. Okay, so that basically it means that all the kind of moisture, and they're cool the way these things work, okay, because like the horse is wet and then what the kind of rug, it wicks away all the moisture. So when you take the rug off, the rug is soaking wet and the horse is dry. They're fantastic things. They're great things. So I'd shove like a fleece on him and a cooler on him and leave him for a bit to cool down. It might take a couple of hours. Then I've given him his hay net as well. So Merlin, so you can feed hay dry, or you can feed haylage, which is slightly wetter and it's got different properties and it's maybe more calorific than hay. Hay's better to feed a native pony. And then I soak his hay for two reasons. One, he's prone to something called colic. He's had it a couple of times, and basically that's where he he has like gastric issues. The first time it was because he'd come off the fells and he had haylage, which was too rich for him, didn't agree with him, and he was colicking in his stable. So that's a veterinary kind of call out, find out what's going on, take some things out, and give him some injections. And unfortunately, he recovered from that quite quickly. And then he has sort of had mild colic again, where he had too much dry hay. There was not enough grass for him to eat. Okay, so what he did is he came and gorged his hay net. And it's a thing with so the kind of native breeds. Some of them are obese and they're prone to something called laminitis or EMS, equine metabolic syndrome. I've talked about these before, which is equivalent of diabetes and metabolic syndrome in people. And the way to sort of prevent it is to kind of like restrict their grazing and what they eat. But if they're out in a herd, it's difficult to manage that. So the best way that I've found to do it is to take him off the grass for part of the day and just give him a small hay net, which is soaked to remove all the sugars, and also soaked because of the potential colic issue. Because if they do go out and they are really hungry, and then you don't give them anything, there's nothing for them to eat in the field, then they come in, they'll be starving, and they will just gorge themselves. And it's quite a good test because he's only getting a small hay net at the moment, and he's not really eating all of it. And he's in for a fair amount of time, again, to make sure that he kind of rests and then make sure that everything's kind of going through, shall we speak. There's lots of different types of horse poo as well. I've talked about that before. What you're looking for so for him, if he's doing really big piles of fairly sort of loose stuff, that's good. Okay, if he's doing small bullet-sized things, that's not so good, okay, because that's more likely to end up being colic. Poo should actually be in round form, and when it hits the ground, it should break apart slightly. That's the perfect poo. Okay, perfect horse poo, that's what you're looking for. If it's all runny and sloppy and stuff like that, then I hope no one is actually listening, having their breakfast while listening to this week's podcast. But if it's all runny and sloppy, then they've got too much protein in their diet because, again, horses, like humans, we all need protein, don't we, to survive? So there's too much protein, so you'd have to kind of cut it down. Okay, so then what would happen, right? Well, then I would kind of leave him. I'd go about and do whatever it is I'm doing with my day, and then pop back down a bit later on, chuck his fly rug on or whatever rug. So this time of year, he's got what they call a sweet itch hoodie. And basically, it just means that he's fully enclosed, okay? And people might be like, why has she got a rug on him? Well, basically because fell ponies are prone to getting something called sweet itch, which is where they have an allergic reaction to the kind of like the midge bite. It's like the saliva in it. They have some kind of allergic reaction to it, and it makes them scratch and itch. So he does kind of have that. He has you may have seen pictures of him. He's got sort of dark bits by his eyes. That's because he has some kind of allergy, and we're still trying to work out what it is. Vet thought it might be sweet itch. I'm now beginning to think that it's tree pollen. Learning to manage that properly. I'm hoping, because of where we are now, there aren't really that many trees. He seems to be a lot better. He's not scratching the same way. I've got two different types of facial masks for him. They seem to be working. So I'm hopeful that next year I'll be able to show him, because I haven't been able to do it, because of this kind of whole issue with him losing his fur around his face. So teenager, what she's been up to? She's been away this week, actually. The house has been strangely empty without her. So I thought, I'm going to tell her a message saying, actually, do you know what? It's been a bit empty, weird with you not being here. So I sent her a message and I said, this is my new number. I told her, I kind of miss you a little bit. And she instantly messaged, because I've changed phones and she didn't know and she didn't have my new number. She instantly messaged her dad and said, I've got this really weird message. I think it's a scam. It really made me laugh. So shoes, right? I'm kind of having a look at shoes, and I did take a picture of, like, she's got like a large collection of shoes. Is that a teenage thing? Large collection, was it a woman thing? Large collection of shoes. I don't have that many shoes, okay? And now I've got to the stage where I have to wear trainers all the time anyway. And she kind of leaves them in a haul. I thought to myself, and first of all, I thought, well, no, tidy them up a little bit. But then I realised, actually, do you know what? Sometimes we can be too fixated, can't we, on like whether something has to be neat and tidy. And does it really, really matter anyway at the end of the day? So what I've started doing is I've started rivaling the teenagers' shoe pile, okay? And I'm kind of like trying to create something that kind of looks like a little bit like artistic with my shoes. And I'll show you what I was doing. Childish and immature, but I'll show you what I did. It'll be on Instagram in the week. But it kind of like, it got me thinking about people who mow their lawns. You know, the ones that are kind of, they've got to have exact size stripes, green and white going one way. And they almost like kind of like measuring it with a set square to see whether or not it's like accurate and, the corners at a 90-degree angle. And they kind of look down the noses, don't they, at the people next door with kind of the weed-ridden driveways and knee-high grass. And you're kind of thinking that, yeah, okay, their stuff looks neat, but they've used electricity, they've used or petrol to cut it all. They've probably used water to water it all, and maybe some kind of fertilizer as well, whereas the person next door hasn't really used any kind of energy at all, and all the insects are there gathering round. So you kind of think, well, actually, what is right? Is neat and tidy? Actually, have we just become too obsessed with being neat and tidy? Should we not be coming more the other way and saying, well, it doesn't really matter? What matters is the planet, and what matters is all the insects and everything in it. And we need to encourage more of those into our garden. So why are we just so obsessed with making everything, neat and tidy? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, does it? Now, I went to a gig on Saturday. Okay, I went to see a band called Star Sailor. It's one of my partner's favourite bands. And it was in the Old Market Square in Warrington, okay? And I shoved some social media up on this, and it's kind of like a big kind of like building. It's difficult to describe. It's like on stilts, and it's an old market. You can go and have a look at social media. And it's an open-sided building, so great from protection from the sun or rain, easy to close the square off. There's loads of pubs and restaurants in the square, so you could kind of book a meal and listen to the band if you wanted to. And you can go and get your drinks from the pubs. It was just, I thought, this is a great space. What a fantastic use of this space. And a great way to kind of get people back into, the kind of, the kind of town centre, which have kind of been a little bit struggling, haven't they? Pubs and stuff for the town centre. And it was great, fantastic. Last warm-up act was a young guy called Ollie Hobson, and he was amazing. And Star Sailor had personally picked him to play. He's a local lad. And what a fantastic experience for him to play and sing, his own music for that audience. And then he went back, was back on stage for Star Sailor's last song, which was just great. And you just saw he was absolutely loving the experience. And what a lovely thing for the band to do to kind of really promote this teenager. And I really hope that we see him at some more festivals again this year. So just going back to meeting up with friends, okay, what have I been doing? Well, I popped Merlin in the trailer, okay, and I'm realising that I've just been moaning about using diesel and petrol, and I'm guilty of that because I use quite a bit of diesel to take Merlin off to trade with my friend Bev. We went round the farm ride and we spent an hour and a half just riding and chatting because the ground was really, really hard. Good news is it was a bit windy and there weren't too many flies. As I say, and that was fantastic. And it made me laugh though, because we were kind of like, oh, the ground's really hard. We can't really, we can't really trot. It's too hard to trot. It's far too hard to canter. And then I saw a post from Fran McNichol. She's a lady I've also interviewed her on my podcast, and she's emigrated to Australia. And she was doing a 3-day event, and she's like, right, so guys, anybody from England who's reading this post, who's then worrying about cantering your horse or jumping your horse on the hard ground out here, right? It's rock with a small covering of mud. I think that's the ground out here. She said, absolutely fine. We're not having any issues whatsoever. And so I was kind of like having a bit of a rethink about the whole thing. So I have cantered Merlin a few times on the hard ground when I probably wouldn't have done after seeing her post, because I kind of, what I do is I kind of like trot him up, and if he wants to canter, he'll sometimes do a few strides, then go back into trot, and you're kind of thinking, no, he doesn't, he's not really very happy, happy with the surface. And then there are other times where I'll trot him, and he loves going uphill, so I'll trot him and I'll canter and push him into canter up the hill, and if he goes, zoom, right, yeah, let's go, I'm like, right, okay, yeah, and then that's definitely fine. He's okay to canter, which is absolutely fine. That's great. I've got a bit of a badger update for you as well. Okay, so those were badgers coming. They're all telling their mates and sending them down to get some food, fighting over the food. But a fox came down with a baby badger one night. And we had no idea that foxes and badgers actually live together, but apparently they do. But it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because foxes can make an awful racket. And clearly they have learnt, because of what we humans have been doing to badgers, to live together as in a social kind of environment, so that if there is any kind of thing going on, the foxes can just make a right racket, because badgers don't really make that much noise. And then foxes make horrendous noise to warn the badgers what's going on. Genius. How amazing is kind of wildlife like that it does evolve, to do that kind of thing. Okay, and something I didn't mention as well, I'm just looking at my notes. They're a bit disjointed. I'll do better next week. I'm going to have to change it as well to comedy podcast, to humorous podcast, aren't I? Because there's not that much humour in it this week. But you know what? Sometimes that's, your week maybe hasn't been humorous. I've had issues to deal with this week, which perhaps I haven't had, as much fun or as much laughter as I probably want to. And I have, one thing that I really do like about horse riding is you'll have a chat with a group of people, and you'll find out about their past experiences, and you'll share experience and share knowledge. And I like it when you can chat to somebody who's maybe going through a difficult time with their horse, or they've had an accident or something, and you can kind of say, well, I understand that, and that happened to me, so don't worry about it too much because X, I did. And you just give them advice on how to kind of proceed and how you felt. And I think sometimes just somebody else, hearing that and saying, do you know what, she's right, actually, because what happens is if you have an accident on a horse, it knocks your confidence massively, so because you're really acutely aware when you're an adult in particular of actually you're not immortal, which is what you thought you were as a child. You're not immortal. You can get injured and it really hurts, okay? And quite often you break something. And so that obviously affects your confidence. And it takes a lot of courage to then get back on the horse. And it takes a lot of work in progress for you to get back to where you were before on that particular horse. Even if the accident wasn't necessarily the horse's fault, like for my leg break, I'd really lost my confidence quite a lot on Merlin. Jane was riding him quite a lot. Every time I tried to ride, I was in considerable pain. And I do think that it definitely impacted on my quality of life, massively so. I don't tend to feel sorry for myself, though. I'm one of these people, I just get on with it. I don't moan too much. I don't feel sorry for myself. I just get on with life. And I think that's always a really good way to be. And then I like to try and help others to help them through things that I have been through with my experience, which is part of the reason why I do my podcast. And then, as I say, I'm moving to the farm ride with my friend Bev, and I'm just riding all the time. And now I've got to the stage where I am riding 6 or 7 days a week. Poor Merlin, he hadn't had a day off in 2 weeks. I was like, this penny feels tired. And he's like, yeah, that's because I haven't had a day off, mother. So it's important to make sure I do give him, but I'm having a day off, but I'm having so much fun that we're actually going out and doing it. And I think that's another thing, when you haven't been able to do something, you kind of like, I haven't been able to do it, right, I've got to do it now, because you're kind of conscious that, summer's nearly over and you might injure yourself again and he might injure himself and you might not ever have that chance again to go and do these things. So it's really important to just kind of go and do them, isn't it? While we still have time to do them. But saying that, I have been doing a little bit less. Okay, I've had time I've actually picked up the book that I've been writing again. I've got 2 books to say that I'm trying to write. I've nearly finished both of them. I'm determined to get them done. So I'm kind of back. I'm having to reread the first one I did, because I can't really remember what happened. And then I've kind of been altering that as I go along. But I need to reread them, go through them all, and then edit them, and then add bits to them. So we are getting there. It is a work in progress, but at least I do have time to do that now, which is great. I'm giving art a break for August because I think it's important to give yourself a break. That's something that my art teacher said as well. Because if you're kind of doing something, you need to give yourself time to kind of re-energize. Yeah, so a break from art, apart from maybe going and doing some sketching with some friends in art class, we're thinking about going to local pubs, saying, can we sketch in your garden, please? That's the kind of plan. Whether or not it'll come off, I don't know, but that's what we're going to be doing. Going and sketching out and about around Cheshire, because it's quite good because you kind of look about shadows and shading and stuff. Is it plein air or something like that? It's called painting out. It's got a special name, painting outside. So we'll go and do that. But so there is something I do want to say. I'm not going to talk about it on my podcast because it is kind of like a personal issue that I'm having to deal with this week, and it's to do with someone's behaviour. And quite often, in the past, I've been really forgiving of people. And I've kind of gone, yeah, that's okay, you've done that. And do you know what? I've kind of got to a stage now, at nearly approaching 53, I'm like, do you know what? I'm not really prepared to accept that behaviour anymore. It's not right, okay? It's not right to treat somebody in that way. And I think we need to be kind of more aware of people's behaviours, because actually they can really, really affect somebody. Because, like, for example, it's like the silent treatment. So I'm going to mention this because my mother's, she's not really done the silent treatment, but she has done the withdrawing physical contact and emotion. She's definitely done that to me. I remember trying to hug her once when I was a teenager, and it was the last time I tried, and she just pushed me away from her. And she was upset about something, and it was nothing I had done. I was trying to comfort her. And to get that kind of rebuff from a mother figure was really quite awful, actually. And you kind of think, well, what did I do about, what did I do? And it was nothing that I had actually done. It was something that somebody else had done. And that was quite difficult for me to deal with. And then, so consequently, I have really been analysing people's personalities and their personality traits. And if I do see things now where I'm thinking, right, okay, I know that behaviour doesn't really seem normal to me, I'll do a bit of research on it, okay? There's a great website called Psychology Today. And I would actually, and so if you are in a situation where you're thinking, you're thinking over, getting really anxious about something that, thinking you've done because this person is not responding to you in the way that you think that, they should, okay, it won't be you, it will be them. And my advice would be, go and do some research on it. Go and have a look at the Psychology Today website and actually say, right, okay, and it's on my Facebook page, okay. So silent treatment from Mr. Blunt, okay, and I am frustrated with him, okay. I know why he's doing it, because he wants to try and improve his personality, but I'm getting frustrated with him, okay. And he needs to build his confidence. That's why he's going out and doing all these things. I can see that because of who his personality type is, because he has a narcissistic personality type, and they actually lack confidence. So despite the fact that he is a superstar, superstars quite often have fragile egos, so they lack confidence. So he's going and doing all these things to get confidence, and he doesn't want to meet me until he's at the stage where he thinks that he's not going to be in a situation where he can't actually speak to me, which is what happened last time. So it's fair enough, but I just get really frustrated with him, right? Okay. But, that message is out there for anybody. The silent treatment, I find it really frustrating. As I say, I know why he's doing it, but it is really annoying. That's just the way I see it. Okay. But I know the reasons behind it, but I'm a very impatient person. So there we go. the situation will resolve itself in one way or another at some point in time. Anyway, that's enough for me. Just to say, don't forget, if you're in that situation where you're kind of thinking, right, is this behaviour normal? Go and do some research on it, okay? Because it's all out there on the internet now, and you can do, because chances are it won't be you. And you might have a bit of a wake-up call and think, wow, I hadn't noticed that before. And don't put up with it. Don't tolerate it, is all I'm saying. Have an amazing week, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.